Hey there, this is Awesome Things in Games, here to talk about games and the awesome things people put in them. Today's thing is how Just Shapes and Beats teaches you its patterns, so let's see how it's done. Just Shapes and Beats is a music-themed bullet hell game developed by Berserk Studio in 2018. Don't let the minimalistic art style fool you, the game is incredibly stylish and can be genuinely beautiful to look at sometimes. While the music and art are fantastic in their own right, what we're here to talk about instead is how the game teaches you to play it. For most developers, teaching players how to play is reserved to tutorials or text tips, but let's be honest, most players hate tutorials, and especially if they involve reading. Where Just Shapes and Beats shines is its ability to teach players organically through its levels. Instead of just telling players the solutions, it instead introduces to them step by step, so that players can understand them quick before the real challenge is introduced. For example, here's an example from the game's first boss. Its first phase is fairly harmless, firing only a few weak shots before it unleashes a much more dangerous barrage to the right. Because the players spawn to the left, this is almost guaranteed to miss, so the player sees it. Right after, the boss begins moving and the pattern gets more and more dangerous with the next barrage firing to the left at the player. And just like that, more and more difficult elements are introduced and piled on top of each other until, by the rule of threes, the attack pattern swaps to a new one before overstaying its welcome. And just like this, the game introduced a new dangerous pattern by first showing it in a way that was almost guaranteed not to hit the player, and because of this the player can quickly understand it and adjust in time for when the complexity increases. This keeps the player from being surprised unfairly while also respecting their intelligence and staying out of their way as much as possible. It's a genius way to teach a game without relying on explicit tutorials. Now, Just Shapes and Beats is far from the first game to use this system, but it stood out to me as one of the best examples, mostly because of how consistently it's used. Just Shapes and Beats uses this pattern multiple times on every single level to make sure the player always gets a fair chance to understand the threat they're facing before all hell breaks loose. And that, I think, is pretty awesome.